was the culmination really of a year-long programme, the Coaching Matters programme, which is between ourselves, Sports Scotland and Stirling University, and it's really a support programme for our coaches out there across the country at the performance level and just below. So today the conference is a culmination of bringing all those coaches together, having some key discussions and some workshop to support those coaches to go back into their local communities and to hopefully work more effectively with their athletes and players.
We want today to be really relaxed and informal. With so many people in the room, there's some great experience, and we wanted to share ideas, learn from each other, both informally and formally in the workshops. Listen to the athletes and coaches, and most importantly, I think, with so many key people in the room, leave with a real sense of what you can do to keep moving disability sport forward in Scotland and in GB.
Ladies and gentlemen, in 2012, the inaugural 20 members of the Scottish Disability Sport Hall of Fame were announced to coincide with the 50th anniversary of the association. We set up the Hall of Fame really through the realisation that we don't do enough to celebrate and recognise our past champions and our top disabled athletes in Scotland. And we also hope that it would inspire a future generation of young disabled sportspersons to become involved. We're delighted to announce that this year, and following the success of Glasgow 2014, particularly that Alan referred to, that we're going to induct 2 new athletes into the Hall of Fame in 2014. And one of those is our guest speaker today. We're delighted that Libby's with us. It's going to be Libby Clegg. Throughout her career, Libby has been an outstanding ambassador for Scotland, for SDS, and an inspiration for all visually impaired athletes all over the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to put your hands together to congratulate our Hall of Fame inductee for 2014, Libby Clegg.
Coaches are so important. It's really hard to explain because I fall out with my coaches all the time. But you're making. And I think it's a really important role because you need a little bit of authority, you need to listen. And that's not only just to like when you're moaning, but it could be all your other problems that are going on as well. And you're the motivator, you're the one that gets the athlete going. And I know the athlete needs to do it themselves sometimes, but it definitely helps when your coach is quite enthusiastic. Right, Ian? And if it wasn't for coaches dedicating their time, because I know a lot of coaches don't get paid, if it wasn't for you guys, then I wouldn't be able to be where I am today, because most of my coaches have been voluntary. I think I've only had a handful of paid coaches. You're the ones that take all the athletes up from the grassroots, and I think that's the most vital stage of getting someone involved in the sport and making them enjoy it. So I think you all do a really good job, and I'm so happy that so many of you have come here today and are willing to get involved in power sport and coaching.
My role with Scottish Athletics is event lead for Paralympic athletes, so working with the para-athletes who are at the performance end of Scottish Athletics. I'm also a coach. I coach athletes who are at all levels. So sometimes the two roles overlap, sometimes they don't. Here today to speak about the 2014 season, the Commonwealth Games, European Championships, World Juniors, and the impact that had, particularly on myself as a coach and 2 athletes that I work with who were at all 3 events.
I was asked to come along today to kind of speak about my ways of how I got into sport and my views, and to obviously allow coaches to kind of learn how to kind of either coach a disability athlete or if they've got one already and how to make it better for them.
I don't necessarily think that the attributes of a successful coach are medal success, world champions, Paralympic champions. I think for some athletes it's about having people involved in sport. There's so many benefits to being involved in sport, particularly for people who've got disabilities and may have encountered barriers to participate in sport. And we've seen sport opening doors for people in terms of social side of things, employment opportunities, just meeting new people, having a different self-awareness. So I think a successful coach is somebody who can work across the spectrum and get athletes enthused about participating.
You wouldn't get anywhere without a good coach. Ian's very good, and so is all the coaches here. So it's great to have so many good coaches in Scotland as well.
My name's Sean Tuch. I'm a strength and conditioning coach in the east of Scotland, based at Heriot Watt. Today I was doing a workshop on how to design a strength and power programme for an athlete. The workshop was predominantly myself and Sammy, with Ian kind of assisting. So we already currently work as a tight group to develop a programme around Sammy. So today was just to give an overview of what that programme looked like and giving the other coaches in the room a bit of an insight into develop that programme from the start of the journey, very general, to the very, I suppose, the last part of the journey, which will be very sports specific and meet the individual needs of that athlete.
Well, my name's Dr. Simon Petrie. I'm a clinical psychologist. I also do work in sport through the Institute of Sport here in Stirling, and I'm here to present a conference workshop about the psychology of sport and how that applies to both coaches and athletes. Looking at a number of factors that influence performance of athletes and how coaches are able to help with those. The key area we've been speaking about next door is how athletes, especially elite athletes in disability sport, cope with pressure. And how those that are able to cope with pressure differentiates them from those who are not, and how that can be a very useful variable, obviously, in success at the elite level. There's certainly lessons that coaches working at development or even school level can take back for sure, and it's really about seeding ideas. It's about getting ideas for how the psychology or psychological aspects of sport and performance are really important, and getting those, I suppose, familiarised with athletes early. And that can help, I suppose, give athletes an edge and give them areas to think about as they develop, from school or development level into elite athletes. So it's important just to be aware of these factors early doors.
I'm Michael Kavanagh, Chairman of Commonwealth Games Scotland. I've been at the SDS Coach Masters Conference today to be part of a joint session about leadership and reflective practice. So I covered the leadership aspects of that. So I was sharing some of the principles of leadership that I've learned and that I actually use myself. And amongst other things, really stressing how important it is as a coach to focus on communication. So as part of that, to get people to think about how we communicate with each other, we did a little task where the delegates were blindfolded and they had some very unusual coloured shapes. And there was a couple missing from the set, and they had to work together to try and work out which colours and which shapes are missing. So it really tested, once you take away people's sight, which we did, it really tested their ability to clearly communicate with each other. So it was a bit of fun, but they learned something too.
For me, what I would see as reflective practice is the ability for people to take the time and actually start to think about what they've done, why they've done it, what's worked well, what hasn't worked so well, and how they can improve things for the future. In terms of how I use reflective practice in my job within GB Boccia, I really try and take the time after each session to think about how I've performed in the session and how that has impacted on the players. But not only from a session-to-session point of view, but thinking about over the course of a year, what have I done, what can I do differently so that the next year can be even better and we can keep building on that.
Overview of the talent transfer presentation, that's talking about in the last 4 years within the Pathways team, we've had a really clear focus on talent transfer, so not losing athletes out of our system. So when they come off programmes, being able to bring them into new Paralympic programmes, but then also looking at those athletes who are already in a Paralympic sport, but maybe that's not the sport for them, and ensuring that there's a transition into a sport where they could really realise their dreams actually. So that's what the talent transfer piece will be about. The second piece towards Rio is talking about the specific things we're doing within UK Sport Performance Pathways team, and it's called Project Para, and Project Para sits in UK Sport, and it's a collective of all those people who work across all different departments, from the EIS, from the BPA, from UK Sport, coming together and seeing how we can accelerate the work that's going on within GB programmes.
I think a good coach needs a few different qualities, one of which is good communication. I think that's really important. The communication between the athlete and the coach and vice versa is solid and works well and is functional. I also think, coaches take up a lot of time commitment, which also is really important, because without the commitment of the time, I think an athlete would struggle to progress.
I would, just to say to coaches to obviously ask their athletes what how maybe like say it was like near the end of the week, asking them how their week had already gone, and if they've got any obviously problems like injury wise, if they've got any problems that way, and just to find out how they're feeling and everything, and if they've got any problems, even like at home, not even just at home, but like if they've got any problems that they want to talk about, and just always be there to help.
Understanding your athlete is vital. You can have all the technical, tactical knowledge in the world. If you're unable to apply that in a way that your athlete understands and buys into and engages with, it doesn't matter.
The one thing that I've learned that I'd like to share with coaches over the past few years is that no matter how, grumpy and ungrateful occasionally that you may think the athlete's being, they don't appreciate your time and commitment. We really do, and sometimes we just struggle to show it. So even when you're feeling underappreciated, I think the athlete does actually genuinely appreciate what you're doing, just sometimes they don't express it properly.
Yeah, these kind of events are important for coaches because the coaches are the guys who are at the coalface. These are the guys who are working with the athletes, and yeah, it's hard to understate the significance of the coach role in preparation and in helping athletes out and helping athletes get composed and consistently producing top-level performances. Coach role is hugely significant. So this type of event's great.
Yeah, I think days like today are absolutely vital towards the bigger picture. I think ensuring that everybody in the room knows that everyone has an equal part to play in producing our talent for the future. And I specifically come from a talent point of view, but even just ensuring that everybody who wants to play sport can play sport and has a meaningful and positive experience in doing that.
We're seeing participant numbers rising and rising. There's more opportunities for people to do different sports, and I think you just want that to continue in the future. I think the last 3 or 4 years has been remarkable in what's been achieved, and it's building on that and making sure there's the word legacy I kind of use reluctantly, but you hope there'll be a legacy from the big events like Olympics and Paralympics and Commonwealth Games.
I think it's important that SDS spreads the information about these kind of practices to the coaches that are coming through the system, because these are the guys that are in contact with the next run of athletes, the next generation of athletes. And for us as sports, as disability sport, to actually start to see much stronger coaches coming through, as well as the athletes coming through, that'll have a much more positive impact on us in the future.
Coaching from our point of view is hugely important. We're a multi-sport organisation, so we rely very, very heavily on the coaches from the sports themselves, from the mainstream governing bodies, and to support those coaches to help our athletes to make the transition from participation through talent and into performance. So, without coaches on the ground giving up their time and working on a voluntary basis, our athletes just simply wouldn't be able to make that progression up the pathway. So, without them, we simply wouldn't exist and the athletes wouldn't progress.